Hi everyone, Sean Healy, change agent and relationship consultant here. You're watching the Relationship Resourcing Series. This is a series designed to support people in having better quality relationships both in the workplace and at home. This episode looks at, or is entitled, Two Stresses in Relationship. I wanted to look at two key dynamics that really tend to play out and can create a lot of friction and conflict in relationship long term. And if we can identify these and put in place strategies that work to nullify them, then we're going to have better quality experience long term. We're going to really be able to have deeper connection, less resentment in our relational dynamics, and hey, that can only be a good thing. So welcome to this episode. I guess I would begin this kind of episode by saying, it's lovely. It's lovely when we get into relationships that are stable and secure, or at very least we have the perception that that's the case. But when there are relationships, in particular our most intimate ones, our romantic one with a partner, reaches that point where we really feel stable and secure, that can also be a time to really begin to watch out. Because once we become settled, that's often when our old unconscious dynamics start to come into play, when we start to go back into subconscious routines and we start to play them out. And where do we get those routines and those dynamics from? We pick them up from our family of origin. What we learned, either directly or indirectly in our family system, was ways and strategies for managing anxiety and intimacy. And what we will find is once we become settled, we often run the risk that those strategies will then begin to play out in our relationship. So I wanted to look at two key assumptions that sometimes run or approaches in long-term relationship that don't work. My interest is in helping people with what does work in relationship. And so stress point number one is when we believe that our partner should be a mind reader. If they love me enough, they would know why I'm upset. If they love me enough, they will know what I need. If they love me enough, they would have done this for me. Those are really damaging and potentially and very limiting assumptions that often only set us up for disappointment and resentment. We are not mind readers. We barely know ourselves, let alone expecting another human being to know us. We've been together 10 years. You should know by now. I'm sorry. Maybe they should, but they don't. So when we get into this assumption that somehow caring and love also means this accelerated jump in psychic mind reading capacity, we are really setting ourselves up here for disappointment. And we need to stop, because it's a fantastical element that comes from the idea of the soulmate. My soulmate would know. They'd know what I need. Sorry, I'm 48 years old at the moment of this recording. I'm still figuring out what I need, let alone demanding somebody else figure that out for me. It just doesn't work that way. We're not even aware often of our own emotional needs and how to meet them, let alone setting up somebody else to do that for us. So instead of going down the pathway of thinking if somebody loved us, they should know what we think, what works a lot better is that we just openly and without resentment state our intentions, our desires and wishes. Ooh, now that can be confronting, to just speak to somebody openly about what you want and surrender how they respond to that. Because it doesn't always mean that even if we ask for something, our partner's going to be in a place to give it to us. And that also doesn't mean that because they can't give it to me and I asked, they mustn't love me. Again, not the case. There are so many complex elements in relationship. But it takes courage and it takes adult maturity to clarify and ask for what we want, rather than just assume our partner should know. So that's number one. Please, as much as we can, avoid mind reading. Go for clear, concise communication instead. Speak about your wants and wishes. Don't criticize your partner because of the things you perceive they're not delivering on. That only triggers defensiveness and doesn't get you anywhere either. Just ask for what you want. Wow. Need to take a breath after that. And from there, our second major stress point is when we become fixated on wanting to change our partner. The longer a relationship goes, the more we're going to see in another person things that we don't necessarily agree with, things that we feel are less than ideal. And in enmeshed, poor boundaried relationships, we start to find that behaviors that our partner does, especially in public, are embarrassing to us. Now, this is a sign of enmeshment. What another adult human being does has nothing to do with you. I know that might sound very strange, but I've seen dynamics. I remember at one particular function where one side of a couple spent half the night going around apologizing for what their partner had chosen to wear to the party. Two adults, and one of them is running around, saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, look what my partner's worn," and da-da-da-da-da. This is a sign of enmeshment. This is not healthy functioning. When we fixate on the other and we demand that our partner change, paradoxically, the biggest changes in our relational system, in our marriage, in our long-term relationship, in our de facto partnership, even in our business relationships, is that if there's dynamics that are playing out that we don't like, we need to look at our part in that, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing we can control. I can only control my responses. I can only can employ the strategies that I conceive. I can do my best to try to control and dominate another human being, but rudely, they tend to like to do what they like to do. I know it's unfortunate, and if only they could see the world my way, wouldn't it be a better place? But unfortunately, again, that's fantasy-based thinking. It doesn't work that way. The biggest changes that we can make in a system is we can look at our own accountability, our own contribution to those dynamics, and change that. Even if it's just our own emotional reactivity and what gets triggered when we see that our partner gets, they might talk too loudly at a party or give what we perceive as uninformed opinions. These are the things that, that's about them, not about us. And again, if I'm looking at a dynamic like that where I feel a bit of shame for what my partner's doing, I'm turning that question back on me and saying, well, what's that about for me? Because again, that gives me my biggest traction point, my biggest point of change. And then I can manage my own anxiety around what's happened rather than demand that my partner behave a different way to reduce my anxiety. We're looking to own our own anxiety and our own intensity and our own triggers and manage them through changing our own behavior, not through changing the behavior of others. Paradoxically, by the way, if we do that, others just change of their own accord. We are interrelated. We're in an interconnected system, be that in business or in our family system. We don't operate in isolation. We operate under the influence of a certain context. Maybe that's business or home or romance, whatever it might be. We are influenced by context, and we are influenced by our family and our social systems. We're never on our own. And so whenever we make an internal adjustment for ourselves, that ramifies out, that changes things. I only need to get hold of myself. I only need to manage myself if I want things to change. And again, that's the only thing really that I actually have some control over. I happen to think that's quite an empowering way to view things, but it's also very challenging. Sometimes it's easier to blame others. Sometimes it's easier to demand them to change rather than to me to get hold of my own response, look at it and make that adjustment. But I will make I will get my best results both in leadership in business and in my personal relationships if I look to manage myself more effectively. So there you go. There's the episode. I hope you found it interesting and insightful. Like I said, 2 very key stress points: that we relinquish the idea that our partner should be a mind reader, and that has something to do with their capacity for love and care, and that we are also surrendering the desire for our significant other to change, but rather we're reaching for a deeper desire to change and adjust ourselves. How do I come into more adult maturity? A great book on this and some of the ideas that that have inspired this episode. The book's called Growing Yourself Up, and the author is Jenny Brown, I believe. I hope that is correct. I'm going off the top of my head for that one. Not always the most accurate place, but never mind. But I'm pretty sure Growing Yourself Up by Jenny Brown, fantastic book that deals with, growing up, because heaven knows I don't want to, but I sort of have to in order to resolve some of the challenges that I face as an adult. But we'll talk about more of that, embracing our adult maturity in another kind of episode. So I really hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. If you're already subscribed to the Sean Healy YouTube channel and the Relationship Resourcing series, thank you very much. I'm really grateful that you have. If you've just joined us, please subscribe, follow on the journey. I hope there'll be some other episodes that you take great value from. I'm really passionate about exploring things that work in relationship to really help people have better quality experiences. You're also, I've got a podcast series, Sean Healy Tools is the podcast series. You can find me on iTunes for that, Stitcher, Podbean. That overlaps with this, looking at a lot of relational dynamics and how to support those just in the podcast format. And you're welcome to visit me at my website, emergencetraining.com.au, where I support people with individual coaching, and also I work with business dynamics in-house, and I run public training programs too. So until the next episode, thank you, and I wish you all the best on your life journey. Bye for now.